Welcome everyone to a super exciting clash at Tata Steel Chess India in Kolkata. We have Vidit Gujarati taking fort with the white pieces. He gets into his meditative pose. He's getting ready for this big clash. He's up against world number 1 Magnus Carlsen. The last time they had clashed in Tata Steel Chess India in 2019, we had gotten a viral video with Magnus Carlsen's shortest game. But this time it's going to be a full-fledged fight here because with it you can look at him, how he has come here. No suit, nothing, just a shirt, sleeves rolled up. Magnus Carlsen comes in, starts the clock, d4 played by Vidit. Now you can see how Magnus is not in a hurry to make his first move. He first adjusts all his pieces and plays his knight out to f6 and then presses the clock. c4, e6, the knight comes out into the center, Queen's Gambit declined, and the Catalan chosen by Vidit. He's one of the biggest experts in Catalan out there. Short castle and you castle here. Now Magnus is thinking what to do next. He goes for the slightly offbeat a5, which puts Vidit in some thought. Very quickly he plays queen c2, defending his c4 pawn here. Now Magnus can play c6, which is a very solid move, but also he can make use of this a pawn which has come up ahead, and you can see him taking his time, nearly 20 seconds for this move, and now pushes his pawn to a4. This is both a strength and a weakness. Vidit fixes the pawn and says that with knight c3 I'm going to attack it. It's going to be difficult for you, Magnus. Now knight comes out to c6. This is again putting pressure in the center. The knight generally does not belong here, but with the pawn on a4, the knight is now looking at these weak squares. So Vidit takes on d5, and rightly so. This is the best move in the position. Magnus takes back with the pawn, and now the knight comes out to c3. So white has a pleasant position here. The a4 pawn is hanging, and Magnus has to decide what to do next, because Vidit can simply take a pawn and come back. The best defense here could be bishop d7, because then if you take knight takes a4, then there's knight takes d4, and the a4 knight is hanging here. So Magnus can opt for this move, but he's thinking here. You can see the time usage. Vidit has 2 minutes 47 seconds. Magnus is down to 1 minute 54 seconds. He's close to a minute down on the clock. He does play bishop d7, and Vidit very quickly defends it. Now you can see knight takes pawn, knight takes d4. You can take with the rook, defending the knight there. So Vidit once again creates the threat of winning the pawn on a4. So Magnus has to think, and Vidit is actually thinking in Magnus's time. He goes queen c8, a very smart move. If you now take here, he wants to go bishop f5, hitting the queen, and then this is hanging, and it starts to get very uncomfortable here. So Vidit cannot really take this pawn as of now, and you can bank on Magnus to come up with creative ideas. Vidit defends the f5 square. No longer can the bishop jump there, and also he's attacking the d5 pawn. This is a very important thing that's happening. Now if you try to go passively with bishop e6, then I can just defend with e3. So that's not a great idea. With Magnus goes rook e8, and he says if you take on d5, I'll take, you take, and then the knight on h4 would be falling, and your king side would get weakened up. So that's the reason why Vidit has to decide whether he wants to get greedy here and pick up the pawn in the center. He rather goes bishop g5, which is a good move. He pins the knight here and now threatens to take, and then maybe take on d5. These are the ideas that lie in the position, and Magnus's time down to 1 minute 4 seconds. Vidit has 2 minutes 14 seconds. Vidit is playing amazingly well. He plays h6. Great move by Magnus. He assesses that after bishop takes, if the pawn is taken, he has compensation after taking on h4. Very interesting. And Vidit does take. Magnus chops off the knight, and after pawn takes, now a very good move is bishop e6, because then you have eyeing this square, but Magnus goes bishop f5 first. He's provoking Vidit to go e4, which is interesting. because Vidit can also move his queen up here from c3 to g3. He plays e4, attacking the bishop here. The bishop goes to h3, and now the bishop on h3 is kind of here attacking this, and f3 played here. A very good idea is to go back and take here, because if the knight comes away, then bishop b3, you win an exchange. But Magnus makes a mistake. He takes on g2, and now Vidit goes queen g2, and Vidit is a pawn up. He has a strong center. He has the g file to attack, and most importantly, knight is a monster here. King h8 played by Magnus, and now king h1. I love this move because you can get your rook into the game. Magnus goes queen d7. You can sense from Magnus's body language that he doesn't like his position so much. Rook g1 looks like a good idea, threatening mate in one here on g7. Vidit finds it, and he's also keeping almost a minute's lead on the clock. Magnus plays f5. Not a happy move to make. Now, one very weird move is to take the pawn, because you can't take the knight. It's a mate here. You can't even take this pawn. And then you are threatening to break open with f6. So f5 is an excellent move. Rook d1 defending the pawn is what Vidit does. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn here, and he goes rook f8. Vidit now can make use of the extra time he has on the clock, roughly 30 seconds. There is a classy move, queen g3. Why is this classy? You are attacking c7, but also preparing knight f4 to g6. He finds it. Wow. Vidit Gujrati in top shape here. Queen g3. He's better against Magnus, and if he beats him in this fashion, that would be something. Rook f7 trying to protect the pawn, but that brings knight f4 into the game. Now there's threat of knight g6, d5, kicking away the knight, and the knight coming back and forking here. King g8 is not a move that you make happily. Look at Magnus Carlsen, he's shaking his head. Vidit Gujrati can go forward now with d5, attack the knight in the center. He's using his time well. 50 seconds on clock for Vidit. Magnus down to 26 seconds, finds it. d5 found. Now the knight, where can it go? It's actually pretty poorly. You don't want to go back somewhere here, but going into the center, runs into knight e6. He goes into the center. Knight e6 found by Vidit, attacking here. Knight c4. Now here Vidit has an amazing variation. Queen c3, look at this, attacking the knight. If the knight goes back to d6, you take on g7, rook g7, rook g7, queen, and then this killer blow, rook g1, and you're winning the queen. But not so easy to find this geometry here with all the pieces, but Vidit finds it. Wow! Vidit Gujrati, absolute monster. b5, and will he find knight g7? That's a killer blow. He takes it. And look at Magnus Carlsen. He quickly moves that because he sees taking the knight was bad. Vidit now totally winning. Look at the pawns on the board. He's 2 pawns up, and he's dominating. His opponent's king is going to get mated. Magnus might as well resign here. Queen e7 played. He moves his queen, and now a very good idea to double down the g file. Rook g3, rook g1. He goes queen g3. Vidit is maybe trying to get into g6 here with a check. Queen f6 played to stop this move. And now, do you want to chop off this pawn? Well, Vidit decides to go h5, threatening check here. Knight e5 comes in, and now rook f1, because after queen f1, rook f1, that's a winning position. No, he goes rook d2, he gives a check. Magnus is like, let's go into the endgame. Queen trade would have been much better, but queen takes pawn. Now he wins back the pawn. He needs to save it. No, he goes rook e1. This is a blunder. You can't take here. It's a mate. You can't even take with the queen because of the check. So knight comes back, and now Magnus Carlsen is back in the game. We are going into a rook endgame. Takes here. Rook e7 check. King h8. Unbelievable how everything's turned. Takes. They trade the rooks, and now rook comes into the center of the board. Look at Magnus there. Vidit comes back with his rook, but now rook d3 is parking this rook on the b3 square, attacking b2 pawn, and brings the king into the center. Vidit tries to stop the black king, but b4 trades, rook takes, and Magnus looks at Vidit, draw, shaking his head there with it. Magnus is like, you were completely winning. I don't even wish to discuss this game. For Vidit, this is a big heartbreak because he was +5 and he would have been able to beat Magnus there. But as they say, To beat Magnus is never easy. You have to make all the accurate moves. And in the end, Vidit Gujrati faltered a bit there. But what a game by him. Magnus Carlsen, as always, escapes there.